Welcome to Segment 5, Part 1 of our Adventures on the Pacific Rim. Please check out Segments 1 through 4 for our Grand Pacific Voyage aboard the Silversea Silver Muse. So join us as we explore Australia with 2 weeks post-cruise. Let's get started with the biggest city in Australia, Sydney. We pulled in and docked at the White Bay Cruise Terminal and were picked up by my brother-in-law, Li Guang. From there, it was a short ride to our hotel, the Marriott Sydney Harbour. The Marriott Sydney Harbour was a great jumping-off place for all the touristy sort of things done in Sydney. The hotel itself was opened in 1989 and refurbished in 2017 and has a simple modern appeal. The rooms are simple and elegant, if somewhat dated, but they are certainly comfortable and functional. And ours, at least, came with a view. Well, our room was supposed to be a harbor view, and it was if you stood on one leg and held your cheek up to the window, just so. But we weren't there for the view from the window, and it was just a short walk to Circular Quay and all things Sydney Harbour. This is the world-famous Sydney Harbour Bridge, where you can literally climb to the top if you were adventuresome enough. We weren't, so we stayed ground-bound and got up close to the Sydney Opera House. Construction on this stunning landmark of Sydney began in 1959 and was completed only in 1973. The grand opening was presided over by Her Royal Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. When we docked that morning, we were hoping to be docked here, but instead, this pernicious Carnival ship had snagged our spot. Otherwise, it would have been an easy walk to our hotel. We left the grounds of the Opera House to continue our walk along the Harbor Promenade, enjoying a stroll along the harbor front and enjoying the area around Government House. We soon found that we were getting no closer to Government House, so we doubled back and walked until we found the entrance. You can tour the interior of Government House, and those tickets are available for free if you stop at the what used to be a gatehouse, now a ticket house, and sign up. Tours commence every 1/2 hour and last for about 45 minutes. And because of that timing, we had plenty of time to stroll the gardens overlooking the Sydney Harbour. The gardens are beautifully manicured and maintained, and at one time were for the pleasure of the English Governor of Australia. The exterior of the house is grand indeed and resembles a castle on the backside. And as you wander the gardens, there are even a few spots where you can enjoy a unique view of the Sydney Opera House. Our tour was for 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And while the ticket said no photography inside the house, I quizzed the tour guide, and she said it was really no problem, just no flash photography, please. Construction on the house was begun in 1835 and completed in 1845. Its first official occupant was the Honorable Governor George Gipps. As you move past the doors of the foyer, you'll find portraits of past governors adorning the walls, along with other luminaries of the times. The house has been used for various things at different times, and has recently returned to being the primary residence for the Governor of New South Wales. The house is often used for official functions, including parties and award ceremonies. The upstairs is off-limit to visitors, as that is the official residence of the governor. In gentler times, this gong was used to call people to dinner. and dinner would be in this beautifully appointed large-scale dining room. Here's a picture of the usual table setting and a copy of a menu used for a state dinner. The walls of the dining room proudly display Aboriginal art alongside a portrait of King Charles. As was common in days past, there were separate rooms for the gentlemen and the ladies to enjoy themselves and engage in conversation before and after dinners. This is the Grand Ballroom, and today it is set up for an awards ceremony in honor of some folks in public service. Leaving the Grand Government House, we stepped outside and headed toward the Royal Botanical Gardens. Now, we only scratched the surface of the Royal Botanical Gardens as it is quite a large area. The Royal Botanical Gardens themselves span an area of 30 hectares or about 74 acres and are a welcome relief from the urban sprawl of Sydney. If anyone owns the gardens, it has to be these guys, the great white ibis. These odd-looking birds are pretty much everywhere, not just in the gardens, prancing and preening and showing off to, well, nobody in particular, just showing off. And after interacting with an ibis or two or three or 10, and we were literally ready to cross the street and enter downtown Sydney. Sydney does have a good public transport system, and part of that includes the metro. And this particular entrance also appeared to be the entrance to the Sydney Mosh Pit. But our goal was not the underground, but was instead the Sydney Tower Eye. The Sydney Tower Eye is an observation platform perched on a slender pedestal that stands at 309 meters or 1,014 feet at its tippy top and offers 360-degree views of all of Sydney. The tower started construction in 1970 and completed and opened in 1981. It is essentially 4 floors of dining, shopping, and entertainment options perched atop a pedestal. The observation deck itself is 250 meters or about 800 some feet above Sydney. The cost for that elevator ride to the sky is currently $37 Australian on the weekdays and 40 Australian dollars on the weekend for adults, less for children. And if you're a senior, you get in for $30 on a weekday and $33 Australian on a weekend. Please note you have to be a card-carrying Australian senior to get that discount. Regardless, the views are extraordinary, and we spotted our cruise ship, the Silver Muse, sitting at the White Bay Cruise Terminal and getting ready to leave once more for another journey later that evening. There is one other experience awaiting the adventurous, and that's the Skywalk. Here is the pricing that was current as of the making of this video, and if you indulge in the Skywalk, you can go even higher than the observation deck and walk around on the outside of the Sydney Tower Eye. And leaving the possibility of a skywalk behind and returning to solid ground, we did a little bit more of a walkabout Sydney, admiring the architecture and experiencing the vibe, before heading back to the Marriott to enjoy a bit of light dinner and snacks in the Executive Lounge. The Executive Lounge is a nice area that you can enjoy at your leisure if you have status with Marriott. There's always something there for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And there are always coffee, soft drinks, and water available, as well as alcoholic beverages during happy hour. The next morning, and we were up bright and early and decided to wander off in search of some of Sydney's beaches. We wanted to find some of the smaller out-of-the-way spots and avoid the major spots like Bondi Beach. This was our first stop, a supposed favorite of the locals called Bellamy Beach. It wasn't busy at all and seemed to be mostly used as a landing and launching spot for the kayaks you see. With nothing going on at Bellamy Beach, it was time to move on and find something else. Next up, and quite a bit busier, was Camp Cove Beach. This beach was also considerably more scenic than our last stop. Out a bit at Camp Cove Beach, we jumped back in the car and headed out on Old South Head Road toward what we hoped would be a nice vantage spot. From Camp Cove Beach, we took Old South Head Road to the cliffs at Christensen Park, Macquarie Lighthouse, and the South Head Signal Station. Christensen Park is a narrow stretch of land hugging the cliffs along the South Head and provides stunning viewpoints for those willing to walk the trails. The South Head is also home to two important navigational markers, the Macquarie Lighthouse and the South Head Signal Station. The lighthouse was named for Governor Lachlan Macquarie, who ordered the lighthouse to be built in 1816. The lighthouse was designed by British-born architect Francis Greenway. Greenway was a convicted felon serving time for forgery. And although he was a convict, he had proven his worth to the governor and was appointed this colony's civil architect and assistant engineer. Construction began in 1816 and was completed in 1818. Because of its crumbling foundations and evolving technology, the lighthouse was replaced altogether in 1878. The South Head Signal Station occupies a site that has been in use for essentially the same purpose since 1790. That purpose was to observe arriving ships and advise Sydney of their arrival. Today, the signal station remains viable and is in use by volunteers who man radios and maintain visual contact every day for the benefit of small and recreational boats. We returned from our drive-about and decided to go shopping, and so we hoofed it to the Queen Victoria Building. The Queen Victoria Building has changed purposes over the years and was built in 1898 as a celebration and in honor of Queen Victoria. Today is a 5-story shopping mall full of high-end shops and quirky architecture. If you are not into shopping, and I am definitely not, it still remains a fantastic place to visit just for the architectural details and interesting vibe. And although it has been repurposed, rebuilt, and refurbished several times over the years, it remains a stunning example of Victorian architecture, now with a distinctly non-Victorian and modern vibrance. Stepping outside of the Queen Victoria Building, we continued our walkabout Sydney, soaking in the ambiance and checking out the quirkiness of the Sydney streets. Our goal in mind at this point was Darling Harbour, and we started at the Chinese Garden of Friendship, located at the southern end of the tourist hotspot that is Darling Harbour. As an adult, it will cost you $12 Australian for entry into the garden, unless you have that lovely Australian senior card. In that case, it will cost you $8. The garden is a traditional Chinese-like garden that is fairly compact at 1.03 hectares or about 3 acres in size. But just like the Doctor's TARDIS, it seems way bigger once you're inside. Filled with rocks, water features, guardian lizards, and koi. It is a fantastical place to spend an hour or two. The gardens were built between 1986 and opened in 1988. It is a tranquil oasis of a Chinese garden juxtaposed against the skyline of modern Sydney. I'm going to get out of the way now and let you take a look at whatever beauty my poor camera skills can impart to you. A good hour in the gardens, wandering the paths, before stepping out into Darling Harbour and literally into the middle of a Nepalese festival. And leaving the festival, we entered Darling Harbour proper. Darling Harbour is a redeveloped area catering to tourists, full of restaurants and shops, bars and entertainment. And while certainly interesting and vibrant during the day, it was only at night when Darling Harbour truly comes alive. We were lucky enough to be there for the weekend and a fireworks display. It took us a while of looking and fiddling about, trying to figure out where the best spot would be to watch those fireworks. We started here and then eventually decided that over yonder in front of the brightly lit building was the best spot. We staked our spot out and watched as the crowd grew and grew and grew until finally the fireworks continued for about 20 minutes before dying off to the cheers of the crowd. And from Darling Harbor, we walked another 2 miles back to Circular Quay for a look at Sydney Harbor Bridge and the Opera House at night. Stunningly beautiful, and the crowds were out in force at this location as well. Tired, and it was time to wrap it up. So after walking around a while, it was time to head back home to the Marriott and get ready for the next morning when we would actually leave Sydney. But first, we took a couple of hours to investigate the Rocks. The Rocks is a suburb, tourist precinct, and historic area of Sydney's city centre. It is located on the southern shore of Sydney Harbor, immediately northwest of Sydney's central business district. In addition to the neighborhood of the Rocks, there is the Museum of Contemporary Art as well. The Rocks was established shortly after the colony's formation in 1788. The original buildings were first traditional vernacular houses of wattle and daub with thatched roofs, and then later became constructed using local sandstone rocks, thus giving it the name the Rocks. From the earliest history of the settlement, the area had a reputation as the rough side of town, a slum, and the arriving convict side of town, and was often frequented by visiting sailors and prostitutes. During the late 19th century, the area was run and dominated by a gang known as the Rocks Push. The area maintained this rough reputation until approximately the 1870s. Today, the Rocks features a open-air market featuring souvenirs and food stalls, as well as a variety of shops, restaurants, and bars that belie its rough-natured history. These streets still house the oldest hotel in Sydney, as well as the oldest pub. Here's kind of a neat sequence of pictures found on the street, beginning with 1898 and continuing on through the 2000s. Now, I added this last one here just to show you what 2024 might be like. Definitely a walk through the rocks is a walk through time. And if you are visiting Sydney, it should not be missed. And if you are going on a cruise, this is the perfect place to shop for that ensemble that will set you apart on formal night. And leaving the rocks once more, we had time for one more look around the harbor area. Another look at the Opera House across the bay. A short walk back to the hotel to collect our luggage, have Li Guang's car brought around, and we were on our way to the Blue Mountains. Thank you for watching. Please do me a favor and like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to be kept up to date with new videos as they drop. Check out my website at tomsmultiinterest.com and stay tuned for more Australia as we head to the Blue Mountains. Check out our Grand Pacific cruise and stay tuned for more adventures on the Pacific Rim. And as always, safe and happy travels from T's Cruise and Travel Muse.